FilmNeverDie. It's a name you've definitely heard if you exist in the film photography world of Melbourne or Australia in general. FilmNeverDie is perhaps the most popular film lab in Victoria, with unequivocally the largest social media presence of perhaps any film lab in the country. And now, if you've heard of FilmNeverDie, you're sure to have heard about at least one or two of their little controversies over the years. And at this point, they're kind of known for it. Primarily, they're known to start shit beef with other film labs, photographers, hobbyists, basically anyone who questions them and their motives and their products on social media. And now, because they're the most popular lab in the country, I have used their services before. And honestly, the staff that I've dealt with there have been wonderful, knowledgeable, lovely people, and much more open than their management seemed to be throughout this ordeal on social media. So I would like to make it clear that this is not about FilmNeverDie's staff, at least not their lab staff. As far as I know, they're all fantastic, lovely people and don't have anything to do with this, and this isn't about them. But anyway, for anyone not clued up on the niche world of Melbourne's very resource-strangled film photography scene, FilmNeverDie have been working on a little project called Nana for the last few months. It's a pocketable point and shoot with a trendy appearance, metal titanium case, FilmNeverDie brand embossed all down the front of it. And after months and months of development, the prototypes were debuted to the public at the Box Hill Camera Market, myself included there. I was at that market. I got to see the prototypes firsthand and get a pretty good look at them. And the promotional photos, which give you a pretty good look of them as well. And seeing it in person doesn't tell you anything new once you've seen the promotional photos. And they've been circulating on the internet since quite a bit before that. And they claim in their promotional material that it's a new camera, and they draw comparisons to the likes of Leica and Contax, particularly in the inspiration of the design of the titanium case. I'd been following this all kind of rather loosely, but I kind of knew quite early on that this wasn't going to be a camera that I would be interested in, or at least that I'd be in any hurry to get my hands on. Mostly the only point shoots that I want for these days are weird vintage half frame fucking things. And looking at the promotional photos, I kind of wasn't encouraged either, because it did just kind of look like those weird Kodak ones that have been kicking around for a while. It appeared very similar to a lot of things that I've seen that are just a single plastic element lens. They claim to be autofocus, but they're just a single focus range. They're borderline disposable cameras. The only difference is that you can really reload them with film and change the batteries. And it's basically just that, but just looked dolled up with the FilmNeverDie kind of livery. And it also kind of started to become apparent that FilmNeverDie did not want to make the specifications of this camera very public knowledge. They claimed improved optics and all kinds of photos of comparisons to their Niji other Kickstarter project, which was much more directly almost disposable camera. But I feel like they didn't want to make the specifications public knowledge for the fear that people would have the same kind of apathy towards this project that I do. And they'd opt instead for the same or better from an op shop or a garage sale or a market or their grandparents or fucking Alibaba. I was periodically checking on the Kickstarter since it launched on the 17th out of kind of genuine curiosity as to whether or not there was some sort of market that I was just not aware of that was fawning for this camera, that wanted this camera. And all I could figure that was that the FilmNeverDie has such a cult-like social media following that's just made up of social media clout-hungry rich kids with more money than sense, and that somehow that they'd rather spend $400 on a brand new guaranteed kind of camera than, a $10 point shoot from an op shop where they have to go out somewhere and actually find a camera and that sort of thing. Like, it's just takes a bit of the effort out of actually doing it. But the more I kind of thought about it, the less it made any sense. And the more I looked at the Kickstarter page, the more I realized I was kind of right. Because by 22 hours out, I quite distinctly remember that it was just over 100 people that had backed it. They were probably $15,000 or $20,000 still short of the $50,000 goal. And the next day I see that the project was backed. A miracle. Some benevolent donor has swooped in and saved the day. And obviously, I smell the rat. According to the Wayback Machine, my memory was serving me all right. Looking at the campaign several days before it ended, it only had 105 backers and needed to raise more than $20,000 still, like $22,000 to get funded. And since the final figure was 136 backers at $53,000, it's really quite suspicious that somehow 31 people were able to raise $25,000 in just 4 or 5 days, let alone whatever I'm remembering from the day of. Like that was still, a fair way off. And then further to this, I stumbled on a few Reddit threads that enlightened me a little bit. One of them being a thread that identifies exactly the camera on Alibaba that Nana is based on. And amazingly, even one that's just caught Gary Wong red-handed. Gary Wong's the owner of FilmNeverDie. And there's this post that has a screenshot that's caught him red-handed donating money to his own Kickstarter campaign, like it's Gary at FilmNeverDie, just backed the Nana camera from FilmNeverDie. It's a direct violation of Kickstarter's rules. It's as simple as that. And while I was editing, I was going through this Reddit thread and came across this bit where Japan Camera Hunter says that anyone who funds this is a fucking moron and that FilmNeverDie is robbing people blind. A burner account belonging to FilmNeverDie gets very defensive about it. There's lots of downvotes, clearly. Honestly, just pause this and read it. It's interesting, but I find it very funny. And then there's a Glassdoor link underneath, and I click the Glassdoor link, and some of these reviews are very interesting. There's only 3 here, but and they're rather old, but the way that these are kind of line up with the way that FilmNeverDie is seeming to operate in terms of this kind of dodgy stuff with the Kickstarter. Young, creative, friendly, good working place and fun, no regulations, no salary, and grow slow. Pros, cheaper film, made some friends, learned to be cynical and not trust people. Is a bit sad. Started work with the expectation to get paid, ended up getting nothing. Boss is never around, got called lazy, unmotivated, etc. Not great either, a little bit sad still. This is my favourite one though. The building wasn't on fire. We got biscuits once. Cons, unpaid, exploitation of workers for experience, even though the business would easily be able to afford to pay workers. And that is what I've heard from a lot of people about FilmNeverDie, is that they are doing quite well financially and they can clearly afford to be pumping money into this Kickstarter. So why was it a Kickstarter in the first place? Japan Camera Hunter have come directly under fire from Gary in the past for a few things, for questioning the marketing legitimacy of Nana already. He's clocked it and gone right into the offensive, and power to him. He's basically called him out, and Gary's proceeded to send him an absolute joke of a cease and desist letter for using publicly available information to corroborate the fact that Gary himself put his money into the Kickstarter with only hours to spare. And it's a pretty pathetic display by Gary, and it kind of just affirms the dishonesty and disingenuity throughout this entire campaign, like calling to mind the likes of Leica and Contax and those really quite high-end point-and-shoot cameras from the 90s. These like Zeiss lensed, genuinely really quite good cameras, and comparing them to a camera that has a 31mm f11 single element plastic lens. I can't stress enough how disingenuous that is and how much false marketing that is. And to charge the amount of money that FilmNeverDie are charging for this camera is frankly ridiculous. They're charging $275 for the Kickstarter package. They're charging $225 for the first 250 units on the Kickstarter campaign as well. And the retail price is nearly 400 Australian dollars for something with a plastic lens. Like, I can't stress enough how bad of a deal that is. So far, the only advantage that I've seen that Nana has over any other camera is that you can put filters on it of a certain filter size, and apparently they're going to offer some different focal length lens elements put on the front of it, but it still doesn't kind of change the fact that it's still at a base level a single element plastic lens. And I mean, if I was that desperate to put a filter on a camera, like, I can just use this Kodak Star 235 and tape a filter to it. And this essentially does the same job. And it's messy and it's dirty, but honestly, I think that's more fun than having to buy a whole new set of filters for this fucking little camera. I know that sometimes I get lucky when I buy cameras, but like, this is a Minolta Dynax. It's not the best feeling camera in the world. This one has a problem where it rewinds halfway through a roll sometimes, but you can get ones of these that work perfectly fine for 30, 40, 50 bucks with this lens on it. And like, it's not the best lens in the world, but it's better than what is coming with the Nana camera. And you can get better lenses for these. Like, I spent $140 on this camera body. I already had this lens that came with a camera that cost me $120, and it's a Minolta 51.4. It's one of the best Minolta lenses ever made. And I've still spent less than I would spend buying one Nana camera. And it's just absolutely baffling to me that they're trying to market this as this next generation camera, this thing that's going to save film photography somehow. This is not going to save film photography. This is an insult to film photographers, really. If I want a point and shoot, if I want something to just carry around, I've even spent less money on those. This Nikon One Touch Zoom 90, it's a 38 to 90 zoom point and shoot camera. It's about the same size as a Nana. To my eye, it looks better. It's just as pocketable, really. And it has more features and a better lens. And this cost me nothing. I got given this. You can get one for like 30 bucks. They're not hard to find. This thing, less pocketable, still 20 bucks, like no money. You can get these so cheap. And then this thing I really wanted to highlight. This is my Yashica Samurai. I love this camera. This is one of my favorite cameras that I own. I got it for $120. Fully functioning. Nothing wrong with it. It takes half frame photos. You get double the amount of photos per roll of film. And the reason I pointed out is that FilmNeverDie had one of these in their shop listed a few weeks ago for $300. I've never seen one that expensive. Like, this isn't a problem that's limited to the Nana camera. The Nana camera is what you could probably call a Scamera. I'll link a video that explains what that is in the description. But it's basically, there's this fantastic video that explains that all these kind of like off-brand point and shoot single element plastic lens cameras that were being sold in the 90s as basically like crypto pump and dumps. They'd show up, they'd sell these things for a day, and then they'd pack everything up and leave.
Scameras. So that's a combination of the words scam and camera. And these things are very, very basic, very, very cheap 35mm cameras.
And no one would be, like, people would spend way too much money on these things and not be able to do anything with them because they're fucking terrible cameras. The Nana is basically that. It's just a fancy Scamera. And people are going to spend too much money on these things. And I just wanted to put this out there just to warn people and to make it public knowledge that this is not worth your money. This is not worth your time. In general, they've done some dodgy stuff already. It's known that they've been intentionally vague about how to develop their hand-rolled films, whether or not they've done anything chemically to them. They're opaque about the way that their entire business runs, and it just comes across really shady. And it's not the fault of most of the staff that work there, as I said at the start, and I've got nothing against them. Who I do have a problem with, unfortunately, is Gary Wong. Even though I've met the guy once or twice, this whole thing just kind of reeks. Yeah, I just wanted to put this out as like a warning to people. So yeah, peace and long life.